An unconventional Ronin warrior uses wisdom and cunning to help a group of 9 samurai deal with a corrupt superintendent and his conspirators when their Lord Chamberlain is taken captive in Sanjuro, Kurosawa's follow-up to his own Yojimbo. And that's the movie we're dusting off today on Movie Bones. You know, a part of me really wishes there were like 10 more of these movies. Sanjuro, the film we're doing today, is a sequel to Yojimbo, folks out there. So it's an unusual sequel in that, and the closest analog I can think of is like the first Alien movie and the second Alien movie, Aliens. They take place in different genres, but they have a connecting thread and elements to still make it feel connected and joined together. So here's a quick synopsis of the film. Sanjuro, it's a sequel to Yojimbo. And the movie wastes no time in getting to its conflict. We enter straight into a meeting of 9 samurai who have a problem. Their Lord Chamberlain tore up their petition against the corruption going on at court. You know, they start to suspect that the Lord Chamberlain himself is corrupt, and they start looking for new allies to support them in this difficulty. They find a friendly ear in the superintendent named Kukui, who quickly agrees to help them. But overhearing their conversation is Sanjuro himself, the Ronin character from Yojimbo, and he suspects there's a lot more going on than they think, and that it's their Lord Chamberlain who's actually in danger and needs to be rescued from Kukui and his men. And that becomes the driving goal of the protagonist as the movie goes forward, and it's strange to say this out loud, Ryan, but I think when I was watching this, the first reaction I had is I was thinking about Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs. You know, it's like, but instead of Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs, it's like Sanjuro and the 9 samurai, because it's like he's looking out for them, kind of like he takes care of them, kind of like how Snow White takes care of the dwarves, in a much cooler way, I think. And that's not a dig at the film, because, Ryan, I seriously, unapologetically love this movie from beginning to end. Tell me your first take on it.
So when I was watching the film, my first thing is like comparing it to the last movie. When we compare movies to one another, when they are a part of like of the common thread or sequel and things like that, we ask questions, even if we don't ask them outright. We kind of subconsciously ask questions like, again, is it good? It's not parodying itself, is it? Sometimes you'll see in TV shows, especially in later seasons, where a character, because their arc is, not kind of, but their arc is finished, that they'll become caricatures of themselves.
Yeah.
Any comedy, they will lean heavily into a trope about the character. A character is has like a couple of scenes where it just really like appears that they're dumb in the first couple of seasons. If that show goes on to 10 or 12 seasons, that character will be an idiot by the end of it. And we're not here to critique that, but case in point, you look at like a character, even as beloved as he becomes as the season goes on, a character like Kevin from The Office. Sequel or movies can do this as well.
Mm-hmm.
Who are these characters becoming? And it can even do this when you kind of have a character who doesn't necessarily need as much of an arc, like our traveling Ronin samurai.
Mm-hmm.
He's a part of the story. In a way, he is the audience. You know what I'm saying? Like, do you get what I'm saying?
He's
not super changing. He's there. He's witnessing the story, but he has the ability to interact with the story.
I think I'm not sure entirely if I'm putting it together in my head. So you're saying like he does not have an arc in this film? He's more of a...
Well, no, what I'm saying is like his character self doesn't really change too much from the first film. If you understand what I'm saying?
That I understand.
Like, I think he's more willing to do good than he was in the first film. In the first film, most of what he is doing is because he wants to get paid. But the sake shop owner pulls it out of him like, hey, you're a good guy.
Yeah.
And, you're going to do the right thing. That carries over. He's all about doing the right thing. And it's the characters that are around him they're going through the character arcs. They're going through the personality changes, the realizations, the growth and everything, which is good. It's good. It makes for a good film. It makes for a great film. That's what I'm getting at.
Okay. All right.
Is
I think I
that
see what you're saying. I will agree. You do see those character changes specifically within the nine samurai he's helping. And they show a realistic dynamic between them, too. It's like they're not all of one mind at all the time. They actually break into camps at different points, which actually causes its own problems. But they do change, and they're given things to do that are interesting. And we'll get into specifics with certain characters that I found rather interesting. I do think I will take a little bit of a difference, I think, of at least my thought process when I saw Yojimbo. I always thought that his asking for money, it seemed like it was, even from the beginning to me, it seemed like it was more of just a way to play to their expectations of who this guy is. In other words, he's actually always been a good guy, but the money thing was actually just a way for him to appear as corrupt as they are. You know what I'm saying? And that's how I took it.
I could see that. Like, I can agree with that. And that's kind of when we first meet this character, he's already an established character. And that was I don't think it was a critique of mine, but I do remember bringing that up in the first round of talking about this character, is that it does feel like when you first meet him, as if you should have known him prior to all of this.
Yeah.
So
agreed.
And that's what I'm saying, or so you could almost infer like, oh, he's always been a good guy. I think that's a correct statement. And now I know I'm the one that said it, but I think also maybe a potentially equally correct statement is he's always been a good guy, but somewhere along the way, he got a little bit jaded and needed someone to push him back into, which is what the sake owner does, push him back into, we do this because it's the right thing to do.
Yes.
See what I'm saying? Like, you have that character who's done right, but they get burned. So they decide, oh, you know what? When I do something, I'm just going to do it for the coin from now on.
There is leeway here to read it either way. And for the purposes of enjoyment, folks, this is like completely ancillary to actually enjoying the film for what it is.
Yeah.
You can use your imagination either way, and either way, it still comes out as a great time. I will say that it's like his overall appearance, as people still see him as a samurai. I guess we call him a Ronin, which is a masterless kind of samurai, but he's essentially a samurai as well as a Ronin. But his appearance is rather disheveled for a samurai. His clothing tends to be more wrinkled. His hair is just a little bit out of place. He lets his beard kind of go whichever way it wants to go. When he actually speaks, he speaks very bluntly. He's not as polite, perhaps, as other samurai are. Doesn't speak as formally. He's very matter of fact. And people take notice of this in this film. They call his honor into question sometimes. But when it comes right down to it, he lives the samurai code. He lives that kind of, Bushido more honestly than than a lot of the other samurai who are more concerned about other things. I think there's the corrupt samurai who looks very much, he's very proper, but he's playing a corrupt game. And he lets Sanjuro know, and there's a scene between the two of them. And the film takes a lot of opportunities to kind of peel back those layers of almost like deconstruct what it is to be a samurai, what it really means, and what the cultural expectations are. And I love that about the film, too.
Yeah, I very much agree. I forgot to mention this just a minute ago when you first brought it up. You said that he's listening in on their conversation.
Yeah.
He's full blown in that house. He's just asleep in there.
He just wanders in. It's like, and I love the entrance he has too. It's like, and he just slides the door open between the rooms, and it's like, I couldn't help but hear you guys talking about this problem you've got. And I would do this. It's like, first of all, I gotta love the entrance. There's something about that that's totally in his character too. He would just kind of introduce himself that way. No, who's this guy? And he's got this, is like everything he does, everything he says is like, he's penetrating right to the heart of matters. It's like, oh, this guy actually knows what he's talking about. But even after that, they still have moments where they like, yeah, but this doesn't seem right. And it's like, no. It's others are like saying, no, trust him. He knows what he's doing. Hasn't he proven himself every step of the way? Yes, he's unorthodox. For a while, they keep getting themselves into trouble too. That's actually the real test of him in this movie, is the fact that every time they mess up, he has to stretch the tale he's telling to the bad guys just a little bit more. And it's like, what are you guys doing to me? And then it's like he has to pick up the pieces. I'm stretching credulity to its breaking point, and eventually that does catch up to him. But so the movie isn't logically or emotionally inconsistent with itself. It does eventually catch up. But the fact that he keeps doing it anyway, is what I love about the guy. He always comes back.
So I want to make a point here. I don't know the male name for this, but you know the term. I mean, we've kind of talked about it before. You know the term Mary Sue.
Yeah.
And what's the male term for that? Is there a male term for that?
I've heard it's Gary Stew.
Gary Stew. But anyways, a Mary Sue character or a Gary Stew character is a character who they are perfect. Would that be the best way to describe them?
They're obnoxiously perfect. Yes.
Yeah, obnoxiously perfect.
Yeah.
They overcome all challenges. What works about this character is he's actually, in all honesty, he's actually a Gary Stew character. I mean, he truly is.
In a way.
Here's what makes it work in this type of story is the foils are all of the people that are around him, that are on his side. Like you've already brought it up, is that they constantly, they either go against what he tells them to do, or they try to argue with him, or they do something that in the midst of actually listening to him that goes awry because they didn't do it exactly as he says it. And that's like 90% of the conflict in this movie happens because of those things. Because, he's just a cool character. He's one of those characters that you want to see him come in, try to lead the people that he's working with to do better.
Yeah.
And when he gets in fights, I don't want to say he's not in danger, but he's the main character, so he's not in danger. But again, what makes it work is the foils that are all around him. And it's his own people.
It's his own people. And I would say this is another mark that separates him from being an actual Gary Stew, would be the fact that Gary Stews tend to be full of themselves.
Yeah.
They know how good they are, and the rest of the world has to bow down to them. In this case, and often the world just does bend to their will. That's another kind of the bad writing part of Gary Stew. In this case, the world does not always bend to his will. But not just in the other characters, the 9 samurai who mess up his plans, but also the fact that, he's very humble about his place. He knows what he can do. He's confident in himself, but he doesn't rub everyone else's nose in it. And the rest of the world does not just bow to him. He bluffs, and his bluffs do take him a long way. They do reach a breaking point, and even that would make him that kind of kills the Gary Stew thing right there, because there is no limit to the end of bluffing a Gary Stew character can do and not get away with it. Here there actually is a limit, and he knows there's a limit. That's kind of what makes it interesting. There's stress on his face every time he has to stretch himself a little bit further for them. He wants to give up on him at one point. It's like,
Yes.
I have had it up, and but he can't. It's like, I just can't quit you guys.
Yeah. I also don't know if this is I don't know if this is because of the culture of the samurai. I can't know because I can't see into the mind of the creator of this.
Yeah.
But the only other people, or the only other person that is able to sniff out his lies pretty quickly, is the other trained samurai who is confident in his own self, which is the centralist antagonist of this movie.
You see him the most. You see some of the other guys he's working for, because he's not really the main big bad guy. He's kind of like an underling, but he's a very capable underling. I'm going to circle back just a moment here, because what this brings to mind is that Sanjuro, you said he didn't quite have as much of a kind of character arc in this film, but I think I would slightly disagree, to the extent that there's a mother character who takes him to task for his willingness to kill very quickly. But he doesn't just brush her off. He actually has some introspection, and throughout the course of the film, you actually see him start to grudgingly kind of accept that kind of way of thinking. It's like, maybe there's a non-violent way out of doing this instead of just using my sword. As she puts it, you're like a sword without its sheath. basically, that he's always
Mm-hmm.
ready to kill. And he takes this to heart to the point where it comes back in the climax, and I love this, is that he's got all these other 9 now as onlookers. He's going on his way, and the bad samurai guy finds him to reclaim his honor from Sanjuro and have one last duel with him. When he's forced to kill him, he said, "I don't want to kill you. I shouldn't have to kill you. This is needless. Go your own way." And the other guy just won't have it. And he's like, well, he does end up having to kill the guy. And the others are like, that was brilliant. And it's like, no, what I did was I don't rejoice in this. So he does grow through the course of the film. There is a growth there. It may be kind of overshadowed a little bit, I guess, by the others because, like I said, there's a lot of characters that do change during the course of the film, among the 9 themselves. I think that's where the theme comes home too.
I like that last scene. Probably my realist critique of this movie, and it kind of happened in the last movie as well. My question is, just because you can do something, should you do something? And what I mean by that is the killing blow and what happens right after the killing blow. Because in all the movie, what we're dealing with is him taking people out with a sword, but in this very last little scene, he takes him out and just blood splatters everywhere. And that might be my only real critique of the whole thing is like, is that necessary?
Oh, to see it or to?
Yeah, to see it. The
Okay.
way it's just kind of done. Because like, and I know part of that's just, testing things out. But I mean, like, it's not blood splattering everywhere. That's an understatement, folks. It is a gush.
It's a gusher, yeah. It makes me think of Tarantino without the
And
color.
that's clearly where Tarantino got.
Oh, absolutely.
Actually, I would say this and Yojimbo are the basis for that kind of gore in a lot of movies.
And specifically, I would say Kill Bill, among all of them. But Kill Bill for sure.
Because, like, I've seen, I hate to say this because I don't like seeing it, but we live on the age of the internet, and sometimes, even if you're not trying to, you come across horrible things to look at. And it's closer now than ever, and that's a bad thing. But, I've seen people get shot. It doesn't look like it does in the movie. I've seen people get cut, and not like an arm cut off, but cut. It doesn't splurt like it does. It's just, it might not even be able to tell depending on where they get cut at. Same way with being stabbed. You don't just like gush blood when you're stabbed and things like that. And I'm not against it. I want to make that very clear. If that's your thing, I'm okay with it. But when you're telling a story, there are times I think this is necessary. Like if it was opposite and we had saw like in all of the other scenes where he was just taking out, the nameless bad guys. And if it happened like that, but it didn't happen with that last one because that last scene, that last fight, it's just so integral to what the movie is trying to convey. Does that make that scene better without that particular effect?
I mean, I can see that maybe because I don't know if it's like if your budget if you don't have like a Tarantino style budget,
yeah,
I guess, and you have we got this one special effect, let's wait for it the maximum, and they did that in the first one too. There's 1 or 2 moments of actual gore,
It's that. So the movies do mirror each other at the end, and Jimbo. What happens is the guy, the samurai with the gun, he wants to fight, and so he obliges that fight in that one, and he cuts him, and you don't see it gush out, but you see the blood start to pool around him.
Yeah,
and maybe I don't think I'm against it. I'm just saying that I do kind of wonder, does it take away from the importance of that scene? And in both of those movies, the importance is really one of the things you're being told is if you continue to choose a life of violence without, thinking about, I could step away from it, then you will live and die by the weapon that you have chosen to make your whole life exist around. Sanjuro does not make his whole life exist around his sword. The other 2 antagonists in Jimbo made his life all about the gun. This guy, he made his life all about the samurai sword. And as a result, they both died as a result of those weapons.
Yes. I think you're right. I think it like I said, it's a small critique, but in a film that's ostensibly more about nonviolence, it could be seen as a little bit excessive, as a little bit distracting if you see that way. And yeah, and I can understand that. Let's talk about some of the side characters for a minute, because I really like the dignity they give some of them here as opposed to some other films. Like, just to contrast, like there's we saw, like in Mark of Zorro last week, we saw how a character, let's just call it the love interest, because that's that's what her character is. She's very much, call the failed the sexy lamp test. And then you have, yeah, and in this film, you have this very bit character. It's the daughter of the Chamberlain's daughter, who they save from being, held captive somewhat early in the film. But before they do that, she gets away from her captors briefly to talk to the group, and she actually offers willingly, based on Sanjuro's suggestion, to go back into this hostile environment and to give her captors, all the sake they want, so that they are more pliable and easy to overtake once they go in for the rescue. And when she agrees to do that so willingly, and so as she binds herself up to do it, and she's more samurai than any of you. And it's like a part of the plot actually depended on her. She passed the sexy lamp test with only like one scene. They take a captive themselves, right? I mean, the captive I'm talking about?
Oh, yes. Who I thought, actually, a little side note, I thought he was going to like join them for the longest time.
That'd have been cool too. I would have taken that too.
Yeah.
But even without going that far, it's like something you don't see in enough films is like the guy they take captive. It's like, man, I really genuinely, honestly thought you guys were the bad guys without having to be prompted, because you guys have been talking. I can hear your conversations. It's like, I know you're not just doing that for me, but I can tell you guys are on the up and up, and that I was actually serving a bad master now. And I'll willingly tell you whatever you want and need to know to help you out in your quest, because you guys are in the right and I want to see justice done. And I thought, that's really cool. I don't see enough of that. That and the mother character, the Chamberlain's wife, and the Chamberlain himself. You don't see him throughout the entire film. You know what I mean?
Yeah, you don't see him until he's rescued.
Until he's rescued, which
well,
is...
No, not rescued. Until they're actually on the compound where he's at.
Yes, until they're back home and everything's good again. And he gives this very self-deprecating, little bits of wisdom to his own samurai. These guys are adding a lot of background and kind of texture to the film that it's like I will watch this so many times in the future. I'm just telling you that right now.
I get it.
Yeah. As for final verdicts, Ryan, where do you come down on this?
I think we both probably say the same thing. This is a Fortune and Glory film.
Yeah, this is absolutely, if you guys were under any doubts up to this point, this is definitely a Fortune and Glory film. I was really looking forward to it. Yeah.
It does. I mean, obviously it borrows from the first movie quite a bit, and with some plot details, we've already described them, the final kind of climactic end scene of the film, but it differentiates by showing, you do see that. Again, I'm not saying there is no character growth, but you do see how that character growth carries over. It's a whole new cast. It's a whole new place. You can watch this as if it was a standalone film. And really, I think you can watch both the films no matter how you want to watch them. If you watch Sanjuro first, it's not going to take away from you not having watched Yojimbo. It's a fun film. This one's got a little bit more comedy than I think the first film does. So there's that. And the characters that surround him are all pretty good. So there's, so it's a Fortune and Glory. Go watch the movie. There's no reason to not watch it.
No. Agreed on all points, man. And I'll add to one difference that between this one and the other one. It's like it's a different genre. It's like before we were dealing in Westerns. Yojimbo is a classic Western, and this one is more of a Japanese cultural action film. At this time, we'd like to remind all of you listeners out there to go ahead and like, subscribe, and comment with your thoughts on all the movies we're watching together, and what movies you'd like to see us do in the future. And of course, follow us on your podcast purveyor of choice. And on the subject of future films, Ryan, what do we have for next week's assignment?
Next week, I don't know much about this film personally, but I do know the name of it. Next week's film is titled 39 Steps, or The 39 Steps.
Starring Robert Donat. It's made in 1935. And we will, of course, provide the links to the Tubi movies so you can follow along with us down And so next time when we watch it, we won't have watched it alone, hopefully. And I guess that's about it for this week, Ryan. And in the words of Sanjuro, I guess the best way to end the podcast is to say, see you around.
See you around.
See you around, folks.